Hi, I'm Phil Ashey from the American Anglican Council with another episode of One Big Idea. This week, the sixth Sunday of Epiphany, we're looking at lessons from the prophet Jeremiah from Psalm 1, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and Luke 6. But the one big idea I think I'd like to focus on is from Jeremiah and Psalms. The very first Psalm, the introduction to the whole book of Psalms. And the one big idea is this: the good life. It's something you can choose. The good life is something you can choose. That's what the psalmist is saying when he says, blessed is the man, not just happy, but blessed. That wonderful sense, that Jesus goes into in the Sermon on the Mount of what this actually looks like. But way back in the Old Testament, David is saying, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. Now, all of a sudden, that immediately makes you think, well, Christians are just negative people who are always raining on somebody else's parade. Well, that's not the case. That word not is a word that helps us define what the blessed life is. And it begins by saying what the blessed life is not. And the blessed life is not walking in the counsel of the wicked, or standing in the way of sinners, or sitting in the seat of scoffers. And so one big piece of the blessed life is the way you choose to shape it. Your thinking, your feeling, who you associate with, okay? And it's interesting that Watchman Nee wrote a great book on discipleship called Sit, Walk, and Stand, because it's a way of life. That's what being blessed is about. It's a way of life under certain conditions. And the conditions that the psalmist says that you choose are to put your whole trust in the Lord, to meditate on his law day and night. And as the prophet Jeremiah goes on to say in even greater depth, to put your trust in the Lord, indeed to make the Lord your trust, everything on him. And what does this life look like? Well, it's a life that's sourced. It's like a tree planted by the water, and that foreshadows the kind of rivers of living water that Jesus talks about in John chapter 7, that sends out its roots by the stream. So it's a growing, living, not just a mere channel or a funnel, but it's a living organism that's growing and sending out its roots. It does not fear when heat comes and when the year of drought comes. This is a life that is resilient under good circumstances and bad. When the heat is on, it still prospers. It's non-anxious. It doesn't worry, and it does not cease to bear fruit. There's a life of visible fruitfulness that is at the heart of this blessed life. So how does this apply to us in the church? How does it apply to the culture? Well, you've heard me say one of the four great questions that any good church asks itself is, what kind of Christian does God want to send into the world? Well, these passages from Psalm 1 and from Jeremiah 17 describe a piece of the kind of Christ followers that we ought to be raising up, discipling, and shaping. And it's a way of life. It's not just the way you think or the way you feel. It's a whole way of life, and it begins by trusting in God. What about the culture? Our culture, which has so many different messages, and yet Dallas Willard says that one of the four great questions, what is reality? What is the good life? How can I become a good person? What is truth? That question, what is the good life, is at the heart of what our culture is seeking as well. And therefore, as Christians with a good news message, we should say to the culture, actually, there aren't an infinite variety of possibilities. There is a particular way. Can we share about what this good life, this blessed life, is all about? So that's the one big idea for this week. Hope and pray that as you meditate and soak in the scriptures, you will be like that tree planted by the waters, whose leaf never fails or withers, and who's always producing good fruit. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.